good afternoon. Welcome back. I'm sorry to have to end people's conversations, but we have an evening and we have 2 more days. So let's come back and we're going to get started on the next session. This next session is called Connecting the Dots, Creating Connected Services for End Users. And I'd like to invite to the stage our good colleagues, Dag Hodhaugen, who is the Executive Director of the Norwegian Directorate for Higher Education and Skills, and also Helene Haugen, Head of the Department for the Norwegian Directorate of Higher Education and Skills. They are also part of the sponsors for next year's meeting in Oslo. So come on up.
So, does the mic work? Yeah, seems like it does. Well, really nice to be here. We arrived 2 days ago, so our jet lag is kind of gradually wearing off, but still, this is a hard time because now it's really night in Norway. So I had a small dip just an hour ago where I felt like if nothing happens now, I need to sleep. But now I'm up here, so that'll work well. So, anyway, we have been listening both at the workshop this morning and then at the 2 panels about connecting the dots and also about the call to action. And we think that this, what we are going to talk about today, will really fit that in a good way, we hope. And so just to start off, one of the things you noticed when you talk with others here is that we have very different context in the sense that you have small countries, big countries. There are different contexts. That does not diminish the value of talking. On the other, it's just the opposite. But it still needs sometimes to get some explanation in. So this is why we'll start with a very, very short Norway 101. So as you might notice, this is Europe. And then in red is Norway. And so we are, as you can see, it's in a European context, we're about roughly the size of Germany or Spain. So it's not a small country. It's geographically quite large. We actually have the 2nd largest coastline in the world. Just Canada is longer. Ours is longer than Russia or the US. Partly because we have about almost 300,000 islands. We have fjords, we have rivers, and then we have a lot of mountains. So in Norway, about 75% of the country is mountains, about 20% is woods, and then we have 5% left. 3% farmland, and 2% are the places where people actually live. And of course, the sensible thing would be then to live together. And we have gone the other way. So you might, if you come to Oslo next year, you will still think, now you're in a city and it's urban everything. But if you look at comparing to other countries, we have sort of distributed ourselves all over the country. And being only mountains and fjords, this is probably one of the hardest countries in the world, or the most expensive to build physical and administrative infrastructure. I mean, to get anywhere, it takes time. And we'll come back to, that's one of the reasons why we are where we are today. So, we are 5.5 million people, the most sparsely populated country in Europe. So when we build the infrastructure, we have relatively few people who can chip in on that. We have been fortunate in the sense that we have a lot of oil and gas, natural resources, fisheries, and so on. So it's a high standard of living. There is a big trust in government and institutions. And this is important to say. I've lived in the US, and kind of trusting the government, not trusting the government, is an issue for a lot of people. The general thing in Norway is a very high level of trust in government, that our institutions are kind of the ones that will guarantee us a prosperous and good life. And it also reflects in loyalty towards following up on things that we do. Highly digitalized society, which is actually a necessity when we are spread all over the country, because most or many people will live far away from things they might need. It can be far to the doctor, definitely banks, post offices, and so on. So there's a great value to being an early adopter when it comes to digitalization. We are no cash economy. I haven't used cash for 10 years, I think. So it's only if you're into illegal stuff, drugs, prostitution, gambling, then you'll need cash. I remember when this is not the start of a funny story, but when my mom died, I sold off a lot of her furniture, and that was the first time when I actually got cash in my hand, and I had nowhere to put it. I mean, what do you do with it? Because a lot of things are cash-free, so you can't really do that. And I found out that there are 2 places in Oslo, in a city of 1 million people, where you can actually deposit cash. so there we are. There is, as I said, also a reliance on digital services in a sense that they do not exist physically anymore. I mean, there is virtually no office to go to. You have to make contact online. And there is a high level of expectations from the population and politicians as to providing good digital services. And we're a high-cost country, which means that whenever we do things, it costs a lot. And it also, you have to take that into consideration, that to kind of see what's the value in actually doing things, the cost-benefit analysis. So what are, more specifically, expectations and ambitions? We have, over the past decade, been digitalized to a large degree, as I said. And Norwegian citizens have come to expect a fully digital experience in services. Not only that they are digital, but that they are efficient, understandable, user-oriented in a sense that it shouldn't be too much bureaucracy. Waiting in line should not be a good thing or a thing you accept. We also have this issue that Norway is a very centrally regulated country. So there is a high level of trust in the infrastructure in a sense that we don't have large issues with that, for example, storage is safe, secure, regulated, that there is an issue that it might be misused by government or others. I'm not saying that it cannot happen because we do have kind of digital break-ins and everything, but the system as such is well regulated, especially when it comes to personalized information. And now we are ready to take this to the next level and create connected services with the user perspective as a focal point. And we'll get back to this, but one of the things that that hasn't been working that well is the fact that a lot of services are kind of being developed by different agencies side by side instead of being integrated into a continuous service that makes sense from a user perspective. And the end goal is to create one digital public sector in Norway. And of course, this is a long-term goal. And so in this presentation or in this session, we are going to talk about the government's initiative of creating connected services for prioritized life events and showcase this through the digital services aimed at individuals in the Norwegian Directorate for Higher Education and Skills. We are a relatively new directorate, and we have combined a lot of services that were previously in different agencies. So this is a good starting point for this. And so they're not up here, but we have members of the service providers here from SICT, which are also Norwegians. And this means that, for example, a lot of the technical services that we provide are run by the service provider, which is also a government entity. So we do have, of course, connections with the private sector and programming and so on, but we also do that in-house in the government sector. So,
okay, thank you. As Dag mentioned, Norway is a highly digitalized country, and we really do rely on all the services that we use to be digitalized. And I've just put up a couple of examples of what we do digitally in Norway. I could have done a lot more. So up here in orange, that's our banking. I do all my banking electronically. I don't even know if there exists a physical bank in Oslo anymore. I do all my public transportation things online. Health services, I do online. Public or social services and taxes is also something that I do online. And of course, in the educational sector, we do also have a lot of digital services. So in the pre-conference workshop, you talked about the flow of digital credentials and everything. So in Norway, we have the two top here is national diploma registries. The top one is for secondary education, and the middle one is for higher education. And all Norwegian credentials, all secondary credentials are in the NVB, and all higher education is in the National Diploma Registry. So I can find all my credentials in these registries, and I can share them with whomever I want, whenever I want, an employee, if I want to study on further. So we have that. And also you can manage your student loan digitally as well. But there is a prerequisite that is really, really important for us to be able to make this happen. And this is something that we call our national ID, electronic ID, and it's the prerequisite. We really need it. So this is a unique national electronic ID for secure identification and log on to digital services. It's based on our personal identification number that we have in Norway. So all the citizens in Norway have a personal, unique identification number that we use to log on to different services. And this is a unique identity that is not only for me as a citizen that grew up in Norway. This is also for immigrants, for refugees that come to Norway. And part of the process of getting a permanent residency is also getting this personal identification number. And you really do need it to be able to get about in Norway. To be able to participate in our society, you would need this number. And this is really, really important. And this is also why we now can talk about not only having digitalized services, but also connecting these services. So this is not something that we in our directorates are alone talking about in Norway. This is something that all of Norway and our government have been talking about for a long time. And we want now, and our government want us to focus on the user journey. And more specifically, we have, or our government have a national action plan for creating connected services. And they have, and this is, you have to bear in mind, this is cross-sectorial, it's cross-departmental, and it's cross-remit. So this is, this is pretty hairy ambitions to make this happen across all these sort of borders and hurdles. And our government have come up with 7 life events that they want to prioritize in creating connected services. And I've listed them here. Having a child, something that we do, and that makes us have to connect with different services in the public administration to make this work. Having a seriously ill child, death and inheritance. Dag talked about his mother dying. This is definitely some time where you really need to be able to connect with the public services and use them. Lose and find a job. Start and run a business or an NGO. And then in bold here, new in Norway, which is what resonates mostly with what we do and what we will talk about in this presentation further on. So what is new in Norway? Basically, what our government wants us to do is to create better and more coherent public services for immigrants. And immigrants here are both, work immigrants and refugees, like all people that come into Norway that aren't Norwegian residents, that haven't got a Norwegian citizenship to begin with. These are sort of the end users of New in Norway. So the first step, obviously, is to gather information on different services and then present this under a common umbrella. And this is then the web page that has been produced, which is called New in Norway. So then, I don't know if you can see it, maybe it's a bit small, but you will get the presentation. You can also log on to the page and you can look what we've done. And of course, in order to do this, you somehow have to tap into the user journey. And you have to map what is the user journey that an immigrant goes through when they move to a different country. So you have to start asking you questions like, as a new immigrant, what are the services that you need? If you're going to function and be integrated into the Norwegian society, what are the steps that you need to do? But mind you, this is a web page, and that's not connected services. So still, as Dag mentioned, even though we have all these digitalized services, they are still sort of in boxes or in different houses. And you have to use your personal identification number to unlock door number 1, the yellow door. Go in and use that service, go out, close the door, move on to the green one, unlock it with your digital ID, go in and use that service, and so on and so forth. So it still demands a lot of the user because it's not connected. And they need to know which door to enter and what service to sort of fulfill in that house. So what we want to do is to take this a step further and start connecting the dots. And with connecting the dots, we have to ask ourselves, or we want to do, connect the houses. We want to make the doors consecutive so that you don't have to log in multiple times. You log in once and you get a place and you are sort of directed automatically to the places that you need to go when you have fulfilled one task. And we want then to help draw the full picture so that each and every individual do not have to create their own user journey. Because when we do that, when we help them create their user journey, we make it a smoother path and makes it more effective. So that's important. And in doing this, it's sort of, we have to change our mindset. And we have to stop thinking that we are delivering on a task, that we as a directorate is delivering on one task, but we do not care what another directorate do and their task. So we have to make sure that we now are a piece of an ecosystem that is the user journey for that individual, and we have to start providing a service and a complete and connected service for that user. So that's what we're trying to do. I think that was you, Dag?
Yeah. And of course, in an ideal world, this would be easy. And if I presented it as kind of things being easy, getting done in Norway, it's probably just as hard as anywhere else. It's just that problems might be framed in another way. Because when you start actually doing things, implementing, things get complicated. We do have many service providers. So even though they might be public entities, might be part of different directorates and their service, they are different. So they will be in a different line of decision-making. And as you know, it's always hard to cross these lines because you might have different goals from the politicians and down. We are below the Ministry of Higher Education, but we are cooperating a lot with the Ministry for Work and Inclusion, which of course has another minister in government, which might have another view than the Minister of Higher Education. So even though we have to kind of persuade both parties. So many service providers, there are conflicting goals, and there are, as I said, high implementation costs. And you have the burden of democracy that now you get a decision, something happens in government, and you have to prioritize something else. So this is what we all face in different ways. And so we have to take this into consideration. And as I have tried to say to people when they get a bit disillusioned, is that we cannot do everything at once, but we have to make sure that the things that we manage to do are the right things. And we have to start at home, the higher education sector. We have to start somewhere, and we have to get some results.
Yes.
Anyone remember this?
How many? So this is American sitcom. It used to run every afternoon when I got back home from school, so I watched it a lot. And it's about two parents, and they're getting married for the second time around, and they've got my children and your children and our children and everything. So there's a lot of energy going on in the house, a bit of elbows, but a lot of potential. You know, you can make things happen. And I guess the slogan is something like, we'll make it better second time around, something like that. And this sort of feels like our directorate, the HK DARE, because as Doug mentioned in the introduction, we're a fairly new establishment. So we are sort of a conglomerate of different agencies that have been put together in one agency. So we have a lot of tasks that we think would be really interesting for people that are new to Norway to tap into and to use. So for example, we have digital career guidance. We have recognition of foreign education. We have national admission services for higher education. We have national education and career portals. We have Norwegian language tests, social studies tests, and also Norwegian citizenship tests. You see, we are a large organization. We cover a lot. And even though we cover a lot, we are not organized in our own organization yet. So this is something that we want to work on. And we want to start making user journeys and creating user journeys with the end user as our focal point in our own house before we start talking about everybody else and what they're not doing. So we have to do things for ourselves first. And as Dag and I, we work on recognition of foreign qualifications. This is close to our hearts. So we are starting now to look at user journeys from the perspective of recognition of foreign qualifications. Now, we could have started at different places in our organization and made user journeys. But the ones we are presenting now is from the perspective of recognition of foreign qualifications. So one possible user journey that we're looking into is you're new in Norway. You come, you have some qualifications, and you wonder what you're going to do about them. So you come to our offices, you come to our recognition offices, and you get your qualifications recognized. So you have a piece of paper, or really not a piece of paper, but because remember, we're a digitalized society, so you got an electronic statement that you log on to our portal to get that says something about what your credentials are in comparison to the Norwegian system. Much like Nadia from South Africa was talking about earlier today in the pre-conference workshop, it's mapped against our national qualifications framework. But this, it's not intuitive for a person, for an individual that's new in Norway and that's not working in the field of recognition or the field of education to understand what does this really mean? What are my options? So what we want to do and what we're looking into is then to create a seamless transition from having your credentials recognized to having the offer of going into digital career guidance, where there's an actual person sitting, talking to you and chatting to you that knows about the Norwegian system, that can help you decode your recognition decision and helping you see what are my options and how can I build my future career. So for example, a person could have a dream about a certain kind of job. But after having their qualifications recognized, they realize that they need to do some further studies for that to be a reality. Okay, so then the career guides could sort of help this person get into further studies. It can show them how to apply for admission for either bachelor studies or master and PhD studies. Or if this person wants to work in a profession that's regulated, then you would need a separate recognition for this. And we could also help then guide them to other recognition bodies, those authorities that are responsible for doing that kind of recognition. Maybe this person is ready to go into to find a job. Then we have tools and toolkits in our career guidance services that can help them create CVs, that could help them write job applications, for example, and so on. Maybe another one finds out that they're really too new in Norway to be able to start with the work, finding a job right now. Maybe they need to learn more about the Norwegian language or the Norwegian culture. And then we can guide them on to our different tests and how they can study for those and complete those. So this is, one user journey, taking the individual that comes into Norway as the starting point. We could have done we could have chosen other starting points. And this is also something that we want to do. But as Dag said, we have to start somewhere. So you could take it from the employer's point of view. An employer that wants to recruit and hire somebody, and you all know that the cost of hiring the wrong person is high. So you want to make sure that you hire the right person. We know that there is a lot of fear going on in among Norwegian employers, fear of the unknown. So hiring a person with a foreign qualification is a higher risk than hiring somebody with a Norwegian qualification that they know about. It's not about who's the best suited person for that job, it's risk management. So we could also make user journeys, for example, for employers to enable them and securing them in finding the correct and the best suited person for that job, regardless of where the qualifications came from. For example, we could also do user journeys for higher education institution, for social services, or for other recognition bodies, etc. The list is long. But we have a Norwegian saying that you have to take down one balloon at a time so that you don't fly up in the air. So we are now focusing on the individual that comes with foreign credentials into Norway and creating connected services for them. And why is this important? Okay, you have to bear with me now. I'm showing you a couple of figures that are in Norwegian, but I'm going to explain them. So these figures are from an annual white paper from the Norwegian government, where they really look into long-term perspectives of how things are going in Norway and how things are developing. It could be, for example, economical, demographic, social, welfare, etc., etc. It's a long document and it's updated each year. So first here is development of the Norwegian age demographics. And I've talked to a couple of you during breaks. So some of you have the opposite problem, but in Norway, and I think also in a lot of European countries, we have a problem with an aging population. So people are living longer, and then the ratio between, the total population and the population that is in a, work-appropriate age is going down. So we have fewer people doing the jobs that need to be done. Because also when you have an aging population, you get a strain on a lot of our services, for example, health services, social benefits services, etc. So this is actually quite a big issue for Norway that we are facing in the next 2-3 decades, that we are getting a lot of older people that are straining our services. And this costs a lot of money. So we have to figure out, and we can't just use our, oil reserves and pour more money into our services, because it's not sustainable. It's going to stop. So we have to figure out somehow how we can reduce the need for money in our public sector without reducing the quality of our services. Because this is really what our government want to do. They want to keep the standards, keep the quality that we are, becoming to expect in Norway, but without spending more money. And they have made a long list of actions that we can go into to make sure that we are spending less money. And there's 2 of these that I want to highlight to you. The second bar here is increased employment among immigrants. In Norway, as in a lot of other countries, there is a big gap between immigrants and Norwegian-born citizens in how big percentages of them that are actually in work, that are in a full-time job. So immigrants are overrepresented by the unemployed. They are also overrepresented in when it comes to skills mismatch. So a lot of immigrants would come in with, a lot of them really high qualifications, but they do not get a job that matched that qualification. So you would have a doctor that's sweeping floors. You would have an engineer that works in a gas station. And that's not good use of those resources. So if we can tap into the skills of our immigrants, if we can tap into the work reserve of our immigrants, we can save a lot of money. And second, our government, you know, regardless of the color of the parties that are running the Norwegian government, we are told as a public administration body that we should do more for less. So if we manage to do more effective public administration, we could also save a lot of money. And creating connected services really helps the user coming to their endpoint quickly and more effectively. So this would also save money. And I see we're running out of time.
Yeah.
So how can we make this happen? We have to somehow pull in the same direction, and we have to work together as a team. And Dag.
So, getting
Yep.
15 seconds to wrap up this. How generous.
You're welcome.
Yeah. I'll try to be short about this. But actually, this is change management in a sense, and those of you who have taken change management, which I'm sure many of you have, will kind of recognize these, and you recognize these when you actually do the work, that you have to talk about these things and make it the agenda, because the general run of the business or the department or whatever will always take precedence. So you have to kind of keep talking about it and not give up. And it needs to be embedded in strategy and long and short-term planning. We have been so lucky as to have a relatively new directorate, which means that we have been able to make a new strategy. And I have been so lucky to be a part of this. So we have tried to kind of get these things in so they are actually embedded in what we're supposed to do. So we need to have both concrete goals, kind of creating the short-term wins and try to start somewhere, but also have a long-term vision of where we want to go with the different things. We need to celebrate results and showcase gains. So about 15 hours ago, the proposal for the national budget in Norway was published in Norway, and we have gotten funding to start up the project here and to take it further, about €1 million. So now we have started planning that we will actually get off the ground. It's not important to be able to do everything at once, but to do the right things. And good relations with other agencies is key, to actually do the work there, get to know people, talk about it, and also respect that they might have other goals and see if you can help them achieve their goals in the same process. Building capacity over time, we see that we don't have all the people we need to build. And of course, change management. So what are we doing right now? We have established a cross-organizational steering group for the project within Directorate to kind of get everybody on board and actually make them accountable for the progress that we make. We have secured financing, as I said. We have started mapping user expectations. We're also doing we're hiring external consultants to do this, so it's not only our own work, and defining the user journeys together, and using service design techniques for building models and bridging services. And preparing foundation for further budget proposal. This is how budgets work in Norway. If you do work, if you can show results, you have a better grounds for actually asking for more money over time. And I'm going to end with one thing. We have talked about the New in Norway service, but many of us, including me, have kids. Mine are in university now. But what did they expect going into higher education? I mean, you have to apply for student loan, you have to apply for university, you have to do this and that. What their expectations would have been was that there was an ad on TikTok or Instagram, and they said, you want to go to higher education? Just click here, and then you log on. And there's really no reason why it shouldn't be that way. that you could actually log in once. You could get an overview of what kind of studies you have. You could retrieve your grades and see if they're good enough for actually getting into it using a kind of calculator. You could apply. And why not sign up for student housing and student loan as you were on your way, without going in and out and doors? And all this you could do while riding the subway from the center of town and to your house. This is what young people expect today. So we should try to give it to them. Not at once, but over time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to try to do a quick transition to the next session. I'd like to invite my colleagues up to the stage for the next session, Enhancing Southern African Skills Mobility, the African Continental Qualifications Framework. We have Julie Reddy, who's a professor of practice in education and also one of our GDN board colleagues. We have Nadia Starr, who's the CEO of SAQUA, also a GDN board colleague. We have Mercy Ngoma, who is the CEO from the Zambian Qualifications Authority. And we have Moni Diami, Dlamini, thank you, Executive Secretary for Eswatini Qualifications Framework. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. So we're taking you from the global north to the global south. And just to say that had we thought about it on hindsight, we should have done the session in the morning, because it's now just past midnight at home and my colleagues are really struggling to stay awake. So if we doze off, it's no disrespect. It's just the jet lag is a real killer. All right, so this session, and I'm very pleased, it's Africans doing it for themselves. That's what I'm calling it. So it's a multi-country presentation on the Southern African skills mobility, projects and initiatives. And it links to our Southern African Qualifications Framework and our African Continental Qualifications Framework. So some interesting work has been done in that space. I'm very pleased. It's a 3-country presentation, so I'm very pleased about this and delighted to introduce my colleagues. First up is Mboni Dlamini, the Executive Secretary of the Eswatini. Who knows what Eswatini is? Formerly Swaziland, yeah. So they're taking back also their colonized name and rebranding. So he's the Executive Secretary of the Eswatini Qualifications Authority. Next up, we will have Nadia Starr, the CEO of the South African Qualifications Authority. And third, Mercy Ngoma, the CEO of the Zambian Qualifications Authority. So with that, over to you, Mboni.
Thank you, Julie. You want me to stand there?
No, I'm saying use that one.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you, Julie, for the fantastic introduction. Good afternoon, colleagues. I want to give a very short presentation of Eswatini, how exactly we are coordinating qualifications in Eswatini. And of course, I think I'll have to start with the introduction, kind of a background of Eswatini, because I think Julie has just indicated that some people do not know where Eswatini is. Between South Africa and Mozambique, you have a small country perched between the two countries, big countries, and it is called Eswatini. We are ruled by a king. I think most of you are aware that we are very rich in culture. Eswatini, and of course, it's a small country because I think it's one of the smallest countries in Africa, 1.2 million people. And of course, our economy is being driven by agriculture, manufacturing, as well as we do also have tourism as key sectors that are driving the economy. And of course, of importance was to look at skills to supply in these key sectors of the economy. And of course, there was a conscious move by our government to look at the entire education and skills development system with a view to create skills and competencies that are geared up for the economy, for improving the economy. Because I think in this SADC region, obviously, we are pursuing a very aggressive strategy, industrialization strategy. All our economies are trying to get into processing and produce goods at the higher end of the value chain. So we're getting into processing, and of course, that requires skills. This led to the conscious, I would say, move of, doing a sector analysis, looking at the sector. What exactly are the weaknesses of the sector, with the view of aligning the sector to the globe, aligning the sector to the region, aligning the sector to the entire continent. And one of the key weaknesses was a lack of lifelong learning within our education system, and poor articulation of qualifications. It was really difficult for our people to move up the ladder in terms of progression. So that was a very huge, stumbling block in our system. It was a kind of a hindrance in our system for people to move around and be able to, participate in production, all the sectors in the economy. Poor internal relevance. The sector was not operating as a system. It was operating as loosely coupled units. And of course, there was need that we relook at the education system with a view to, rectify and make corrections so that it operates as a system and it is yielding the results that we desire in terms of the skills and competencies that we produce as a country. Poor relevance of qualifications, I've already indicated the poor articulation of qualifications. That was the key issues that were identified, which led to the establishment of the National Qualifications Framework. This was seen as the centerpiece in the whole transformation of our education system to support development, to support sustained development. And of course, it served also as a way of creating interface with industry, because I think when I was attending the session this morning, it was clear that there is need for enhanced interface between our education providers as well as industry. So the qualifications framework was seen as a centerpiece, as a missing centerpiece in the creation of the interface between education providers as well as industry. So this is the qualifications framework, the architecture. Obviously, it is 10 levels, and it is benchmarked with the SADC qualifications framework, as well as the Commonwealth transnational qualifications framework, because we are operating as well under the Commonwealth. So, and of course, it is cutting across the entire system. We have general education, early learning, general education. We have technical and vocational education, as well as higher education. So it is a way, like I indicated, that it is a way of actually bringing together all the units, bringing together all the cyclists, so that at the end of the day, we are producing credible people who will be able to be absorbed even beyond boundaries of the country and enhance mobility of our learners. And in fact, this is also serving as a key instrument in evaluating foreign qualifications. Like I indicated, that we are now leaping forward in terms of our production. We want to produce at the higher end of the value chain. So we are attracting quite a number of, people into our space. So there is need that we evaluate for foreign qualifications to validate the competencies, to see if the qualifications are actually pitching with our local qualifications in terms of the competencies, in terms of skills, and in terms of knowledge. So in a nutshell, I would say this was the centerpiece in the transformation to bring together all the cyclists in the system, and of course to enhance mobility of skills, both outbound mobility as well as inbound mobility of skills and competencies. So probably let me stop here, otherwise.
Thank you, Bonnie. The South African situation. I'll start with context, just like Bonnie did. In South Africa, we've got about 62 million people. Last year's census was slightly undermined, but it's about 62 million, so a very large country. We have this year celebrated 30 years of democracy, so we're also a relatively new democracy. We're still building and finding our feet in terms of our democratic dispensation. That being said, we have been gifted the legacy from apartheid of vast inequality, unemployment, and poverty. Systems that systematically marginalized anyone of color and created the majority, 90% of us, that have, disparate education, lower quality education, and were really built for laborers and low quality work, with the minority education systems looking after the white minority at that time. So this has left us as a country really still looking for integration and equity in terms of our education systems. In terms of the South African system, we, and I'll show you our NQF in a minute, but we have, in general and further education, we have a massive system. I can't read the numbers there. But in the schooling system, we have about 23,000 public schools. We have over 2,000 private schools, and these are generally looking after the school leaving certificates, our national senior certificate. We also have an occupational and professional subsector like the Eswatini sector. In that sector, we have approximately 26 quality assurance partners, approximately 1,000, about 800 providers of skills, workplace skills, etc., and approximately 700 qualifications that we look after. And in higher education, I think the sector that many of you would be more familiar with, we have 26 public universities, massive institutions, 160 private higher education institutions, and over 7,000 qualifications. This is the ecosystem that SAQA and the NQF, sorry, I missed those. This is the ecosystem that SAQA and the NQF are trying to regulate and create parity and integration in relation to our previous dispensation. So just like the Eswatini National Qualifications Framework, our NQF is a 10-level NQF. This NQF is one of the oldest in the world. We are one of the first 5 in the world, along with Ireland, England, Scotland, South Africa, and Australia. We were one of the first to build these systems. But our system is uniquely a democratic instrument. It was an instrument that was put in place to reject all the previous inequitable education. And so our NQF is still a transformative instrument. It is an instrument that aims for access, equity, redress, recognition of prior learning is built into the system so that workers and people with skills are able to recognize those skills. But this is also the system like Eswatini that we use, and like Norway, that we use to recognize and evaluate skills that are coming into our system. So it is important when we see other systems that look like ours, it's much easier for us to talk to those systems, and we'll speak to that in a minute. I just wanted to lastly indicate that in terms of our system, we also have what is called the National Learner Results Database, and Helene intimated that in South Africa we have one national database. Everything from basic schooling, higher education, and the skills and occupational system, engineers, artisans, plumbers, etc. All of their qualifications, if it is a valid, recognized national qualification, legislation requires that it comes into the national repository. So we have a very rich database of about 24 million qualification achievements, approximately just fewer than that in terms of number of people. But we also have about 125,000 RPL achievements, people that we've recognized just on the basis of them presenting and mediating the skills that they have outside of the formal academy. And this, of course, has been one of our greatest achievements.
Okay, thank you very much. I will present on the Zambian situation. We are a landlocked country. I think we have about 7 neighbors. Population for Zambia is about 21.1 million people. This is according to UN projections. And we are home to the Victoria Falls. So when you come to Africa, please make sure that you come and visit the Victoria Falls. We gained independence in 1964. So this October, we'll be celebrating 60 years of independence. And our education system is almost as old as our independence, with the first university being established in 1966. This was the indigenous Zambian university. Our education sector is actually divided into 3 parts. The first one is general education, and this takes care of primary and secondary education. And just to mention that general education in Zambia has been made free, and we've had an unprecedented number of students enrolling this year of about 5.7 million learners in general education. Then we have the idea behind making this general education free is to ensure that even the underprivileged have the basic education that they can get. Then we have trades and occupations sub-framework, which takes care of TVET. This is technical education and also vocational training. And we have about 14,000 learners under TVET. And what government is trying to do is introduce TVET while in general education, so that it gives learners that are not so gifted academically to take the TVET route, so that they can develop themselves into to get skills that they can use later in life. Also, government is concentrating on developing this sector, because now it has realized that for any developing nation, you need this set of skills for you to use in the sector. Like Eswatini has mentioned, that our governments are concentrating now on ensuring that we produce finished goods, adding value to our products. Zambia is rich when it comes to copper, but in the previous years, we've just mined the copper and exported it as raw. Now, government is rethinking of how can we add value to this copper. So now those are the skills that we want to start developing in the TVET sector. And we are looking at introducing technical universities under TVET. Then we have higher education, where we have about 126,000 learners. And under this, we have 9 public universities and 54 private. In 1992, because of the attrition ratio that was there, people progressing into higher education, the government decided to open education even to the private sector. So that is why you will see that the number of private universities is high. And once you open up the sector to private players, then the issues of quality come in. And that is why institutions were put in place to ensure that there is quality in education. There are 2 ministries that are charged with ensuring managing education in Zambia. This is the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Technology and Science. But we have other ministries like health and education that train people that are relevant to their industry. So talking about quality, there are institutions that have been put in place to ensure quality, and also mobility of qualifications. I think we are talking about the portability of qualifications, having them digitalized and all that. But we are looking at portability of qualifications, mobility of qualifications through quality. If Eswatini is going to rely on my qualifications, they should be comfortable with the quality of the qualifications that we are producing as Zambia. So there are institutions that have come together to ensure that there is quality in these qualifications. Under the general education sub-framework, we have 3 main institutions that are charged with quality. We have the Department of Standards, we also have the Department of Curriculum Development, and also the Examinations Council of Zambia. So these, they develop the curriculum, they put standards in place for quality under the general education sub-framework, and also they manage the examinations to ensure that they meet international standards. Then under the Trades and Occupations sub-framework, we have the Technical Education, Vocational and Entrepreneurship Training Authority. So these ones, they ensure that training is relevant for industry, and also they register and accredit the trainers and also the learning programs that are offered under this sub-framework. Then we have the Higher Education Authority, which is in charge of the higher education sub-framework, and also they also ensure that they accredit the learning programs, the institutions of higher learning, also in the sub-framework. Now, all these institutions, their outputs actually are managed by the Zambia Qualifications Authority, which is the institution that I manage. So we are more like a quality assurance on quality assurance. So we ensure that the quality assurance agencies are actually doing what they're supposed to do. So this provides comfort even to the stakeholders that, yes, there is quality in these qualifications that have been issued by Zambia. Now, the Zambia Qualifications Authority is a statutory body which sits under the Ministry of Education, and it develops and implements a national qualifications framework. And this framework, we have provided standards to ensure that other bodies follow in developing their qualifications. There are also other things that we've done in ensuring the recognition of our qualifications, such as the review of the National Policy on Education, which ensures that we take into account the emerging issues like digital literacy and climate change and global citizenship. We've also done a review of the National Curriculum Framework to align it to the National Education Policy. We are doing the referencing to regional frameworks and also the development of national occupational standards. And this is what my colleagues had talked about, ensuring that learning is aligned to the needs of industry. So these are some of the things that we are doing to ensure recognition of our qualifications. We also have a 10-level national qualifications framework, and this is anchored on the principle of knowledge, skills, and competences. And we have to ensure that all learning that comes, all qualifications that come in the country are verified and evaluated and placed at a level that is equivalent to our framework for recognition purposes. So I think this is the whole purpose of these frameworks, is to ensure recognition of qualifications and also facilitate for mobility of qualifications among member states. So I think I'll end here.
Thank you. So some of you might be thinking you're sitting in a TISIP conversation now. Why are we telling you about our countries? The reason we're telling you about these systems and each country system is because these NQFs for us are supporting skills mobility. Yeah. It is through these NQFs and these languages that we are commonly speaking that we're able to speak country to country. This picture is slightly outdated, but it gives you a sense. If you look at just the dark blue, these are the regions that are covered by national qualifications frameworks. I think the light, the gray, North America, I'm talking to you. Grey, there's no NQF, although it is emerging. And in the light blue, we've got sort of sectoral or regional stuff. But if you're looking at generally the blue shades, you'll see that most of the world is covered by some system that regulates qualifications. And our argument is that by using these systems that look very similar in different contexts, doing different things, we're able to talk to one another. We're able to enable skills mobility from very different perspectives. We're able to have these conversations as entities that have executive mandates to allow you into the country or not, and to recognize these skills. And so our contention is, of course, that having these NQFs allows us to have the conversations that enable skills mobility. For us, this is maybe a bit of a nested approach in terms of recognition of skills. My colleague will talk to you in a minute about conventions, the UNESCO conventions, and Dr. Shakroon mentioned them this morning. But the conventions and the intentions of those conventions enable us to have conversations about global mobility. The frameworks give us the language to actually talk about what you have versus what we need and what we see in our country. And then if that's missing, we can talk country to country in terms of having agreements between the countries. But all of these, for us, are enabling skills mobility. As member states, we use all of them or one at a time, whichever is available. Of course, if they're all available, we're winning a lot faster.
Let me talk about the Addis Convention, which is a convention on the recognition of studies, certificates, diplomas, degrees, and other academic qualifications in higher education. This is for African states, which was adopted in 2014 and entered into force in 2019. So this convention establishes a legal framework for the fair and transparent evaluation of tertiary education. This is for the African region. So the main purpose of this convention is to promote mutual recognition. It helps to establish a framework for the recognition of tertiary education qualifications across the African member states. It also facilitates mobility of qualifications and also skills within the region. Like Nadia has mentioned, that we are talking about all these things to show you what we are doing to ensure that our skills and also our students are mobile, our qualifications are mobile. So it facilitates mobility of academic qualifications and also professions across the African member states. So there's also comparability of qualifications because this convention dictates that member states put in place systems of quality assurance and also transparent mechanisms for the recognition of qualifications for other member states. So it allows for us to show that there is comparability in our qualifications, and also it facilitates for mutual recognition because there's mutual trust in these recognitions. In putting systems for Zambia, we are ensuring that our stakeholders are able to rely on our systems in the recognition of our qualifications. The convention also promotes cooperation among member states. This is in the tertiary education sector through research across the member states. And also it supports lifelong learning through the enhancement of opportunities for continuous education and career development. So currently it has 14 member states, and the 4 of the member states are from the SADC region. I know we can do much better, but we are still working on that. I think there are some issues that the requirements to the conventions that the member states were still working on. So in SADC region, Mauritius, Seychelles, South Africa, and Zambia have ratified the convention. And they're happy to mention that South Africa has even ratified the Global Convention, to which Zambia is still working towards, and also Eswatini. So we are hoping that before the end of the year, as Zambia, we would be able to ratify the Global Convention, which is similar to the Addis Convention. Yeah. let's still move on.
Okay, so on the SADC qualifications framework, Mercy has already mentioned SADC. For those of you that don't know, the Southern African Democratic Community is just simply our region at the bottom tip of Africa. 15 member states, you know, who of course all have sovereign independence. The SADC framework is a regional framework. So we've spoken about our national qualifications framework. This particular framework is a regional framework similar to the European qualifications framework, if you're familiar with that, that simply looks at the region and is really a framework of frameworks. The framework is there for us to reference against, but its primary goal is to ensure mobility and recognition. Our SADC framework promotes mobility of skills and learners within the SADC region amongst the 15 member states, and it also has 10 levels. So like the 3 NQFs and many others in Africa, it has a similar 10-level structure. It has a similar level descriptor structure. It contains knowledge, skills, and competencies, you know, that we've heard in the other frameworks.
Okay, just to add on the SADC qualifications framework, it has 6 programs of implementation. The first one is alignment of national qualifications frameworks to the SADC qualifications framework. So member states are encouraged to align their frameworks to the regional framework to ensure transparency and also comparability of their frameworks to the regional framework. This allows for, if a country has aligned to the SADC qualifications framework, it is easy for another country to compare their qualifications to that country's qualifications. It also, the second program is on quality. So it emphasizes on putting in place quality assurance mechanisms within the member states to ensure that the qualifications that are issued meet the relevant international standards. Then the third program is on verification, which talks about mobility of qualifications and also recognition of member states' countries. So through the verification and evaluation of qualifications, we are able to recognize each other's qualifications. Then the fourth program is on articulation, RPA, credit accumulation and transfer. I think Nadia touched a bit on that when she was talking about her presentation. Then there's advocacy and communication, which we are supposed to raise awareness about the implementation of the framework. And then the 6th program talks about governance.
Yeah, this is the African Continental Qualifications Framework is a recent project in the qualification space in Africa. It is a very ambitious project. But I think we are seeing the results because I think this work started in 2021, 2022, and it culminated in 2023 in the validation of the African Continental Qualifications Framework. This is a meta framework for the entire continent. That is why I'm saying it's an ambitious program because we are looking at actually bringing, you know, it's kind of a common zone for trusted qualifications in Africa. It is also a way of facilitating mobility of skills and competencies within the continent. We are moving from region to continent, and of course, I think we are anticipating very huge benefits in this one here because already we are seeing Francophone countries now coming to the party because the whole NQF game has been dominated by Anglophone countries in Africa. But now we are seeing a lot of interest among the Francophone countries and other languages to also jump into the bandwagon. So it is a way of actually having kind of a common zone for all our qualifications. I think this morning it was very clear that we are striving for trust. We are striving for transparency of qualifications for us to be able to see movement within our spaces. So this is actually an effort by the continent to have a common zone or to have kind of a standard for Africa which we can possibly reference against for our qualifications. It has the pull effect in terms of the education systems in Africa. It has the effect of enhancing transformation within our systems so that we are able to realize the goals that we want to realize as a continent. We are looking at this as a reference framework. We are using it as a centerpiece to compare our qualifications. Already, I think the first bunch of countries have already started the work of aligning, referencing their qualifications frameworks to the ACQF. And of course, this, we are anticipating that it will be all the countries in Africa aligning with this to allow and to kind of promote transparency as well as comparability of qualifications so that we have articulation in terms of our qualifications. If one is moving from Eswatini to South Africa, it should be easy for the learner to integrate. Moving to Zambia, it should be easy to integrate. And of course, even the product of our systems in terms of the competencies that we produce as countries, we should be able to see movement among our workers because of the competence, because of the credibility of skills that they have. So we are using a number of criteria to compare our qualifications. One, which is the architecture. We are talking of 10 levels. We're also using learning outcomes as a basis for the level descriptors. We are also comparing that. We're also comparing quality assurance systems within our systems, because that is also very important. For trust to be enhanced, you need to be transparent, and you need to quality assure the whole process in terms of, designing programs, teaching and learning up to assessment. So the entire system, we are looking at issues around quality assurance, because this is what will enhance the trust in terms of our systems, and of course it will enhance mobility of our learners within the entire continent now.
So just a quick summary before we close, and to tell you what the status is. So for Eswatini, they're in the process, and they're moving quite quickly to ratify the Global and the Addis Convention on Higher Education. They've initiated the referencing of their qualifications framework to the SADC qualifications framework, and then to reference it to the African Continental qualifications framework. And our referencing in Africa is a little different. It is validating and authenticating the qualification, that it's a genuine qualification first, and then comparing it and looking almost as equivalents on the different levels of the NQF. So it's a much more comprehensive process of referencing. South Africa, as Mercy has said, has ratified both conventions and has already referenced the South African qualifications framework to the SADC framework. And it's in the process of initiating the reference to the Continental framework. It actually, even before the Addis Convention, started implementing mechanisms for the recognition of qualifications of refugees and asylum seekers. So we were surprised to see Clause 19 of the Addis Convention spoke to that, because we had actually started that project just from a need of our country, because Africa had refugees way before the European crisis. And we knew that we had to take a very concerted effort to address this issue. Zambia has ratified the Addis Convention, and they're in the process of ratifying the Global Convention. They've also initiated and are quite far along in referencing to the SADC qualifications framework. And I think Zambia was the first African country to do the UNESCO qualifications passport project for refugees and asylum seekers. And this also was a few years back, almost, yeah, when the time of the Addis Convention, came into play. So that's where these countries are. And if you have any questions, please talk to the, to the three presenters during the break. But we're going to leave you with 2 short videos to show you that Africa is really moving forward. So we want you to come visit us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sabi girl no dey too like talk. Animals dey in human form. Body man nobody like work, but you must hustle if you want job. You no finish they won't fight us. If them they run them no fit catch up. I know they form say I too righteous. No con they form say you too like us. Me no get the time for the hate and the bad energy. Got my mind on my money. Make you dance like broccoli. Steady green like broccoli. Steady on my grind, oh yeah, what they want telling me could deny my fantasy. They want to check if my tap ain't no wrong. But it they rush well, it be much. Now gotta make my tap it they rush. The kind money we touch, yeah. It they rush well, it be much. No be hype, everybody they crush. There's no darling with us. For me, Jack Bata, I dey go Ghana. You never thought you dey from papas. Which kind money we never see before. Cause hello me, got me feeling I'm the one. Ajay. Can never take my cake away. Ajay, you can't count my grace. I just did my lane. You no get the time for the hate and the bad energy. Got my mind on my money. Make you dance like broccoli. Steady green like broccoli. Steady on my grind, oh yeah.
Thank you. You have me dreaming of Africa. All right, I'd like to thank our presenters from the last presentation. We are getting close. Only a few more words between you and the reception that will be later this evening. But I'd like to invite our colleague Taylor Hansen from the T3 Network to give us some reflections post the pre-conference workshop today.
Thanks, Melanie. One of the benefits to being one of the last speakers of the day is my popularity the rest of this conference depends on how quickly I get you to drinks. So I will try to do this quickly and do justice. But before I dive in, I just want to say thank you to GDN for their partnership with the Chamber Foundation and letting us sponsor the conference. And, oh, now they're working. Okay, I'll go back. All right. So just wanted to say thank you to GDN for your partnership. And thank you to Simone for helping facilitate the workshop this morning. And just want to say thank you also to our funders. So all the projects you hear about through the T3 Innovation Network that is made possible by Walmart and Gates and other funders, but those are our 2 main funders for T3. And so just want to also acknowledge that they're making this work possible. So Jason, on his panel earlier today, briefly mentioned what the Chamber Foundation is. And if you were at the workshop, this is going to be a redundant slide for you. But the Chamber Foundation and the Chamber of Commerce, they are not government agencies. We are private organizations. So the Chamber of Commerce is the world's largest business federation. And the Chamber of Commerce Foundation is the nonprofit affiliate for the Chamber of Commerce. So I work on the foundation side where all of my projects and efforts are focused on skills-based hiring and advancement. And when we think about the Chamber Foundation and what our work is, all of our projects are centered around employer-led partnerships that can either focus on modernizing workforce data or education data, or creating or identifying innovative ways to finance the acquisition of skills. So as you think about a skills-based economy, and we think about what is going to be needed to facilitate a skills-based economy, that's going to require a modernized digital infrastructure, as well as persistent upskilling and reskilling opportunities that can be affordable and can lead to new pathways of employment and education. And so we have, this work is all done through our kind of 6 core programmatic initiatives. So T3 is the main one that I'm here to talk about today and that we talked about this morning. But all these projects are centered around skills-based hiring and skills-first strategies that can support organizations as they want to adopt skills-first strategies and best practices. So the T3 Innovation Network, our mission is to bring about the digital transformation of the talent marketplace. And it was encouraging this morning to come and see that our mission at T3 around promoting interoperability and empowering individuals with data about their skills and abilities is something that is very synergistic and aligned to GDN and everyone in this room today. So as people share their projects and what they're doing in their various countries or their various organizations, it was really uplifting to see that this is something that we all kind of have a shared purpose. And seeing that shared purpose with a brand new audience for me was really encouraging and has made me excited to be more engaged with this international audience. And that's one of the main focuses of T3 as we move forward into this next stage of work and the next phase of our projects, is to ensure that as we develop systems here in the United States, that we're not doing that in a silo, and that we're learning from the best practices and things that you guys have done in Europe and across the globe. And hopefully, through our mistakes and lessons learned, you can learn from some of the stuff that we're doing here. And so this is really about that shared collaboration, developing those partnerships and friendships. So when we think about the T3 Innovation Network and what we're trying to do, and it sounds like what everyone here is trying to do, is like we have 3 core missions or core visions for how we're trying to achieve this digital transformation. We want to make sure that all learning counts. We recognize that oftentimes in these settings, we talk about education and experience and how you can take a transcript from your institution and use that for employment opportunities. But we also recognize that lots of learning and skill development occurs outside of the classroom. You have people who stop their careers or pause their careers to have a family or to support a loved one who's going through a health crisis. And they have these gaps in their employment history, but during that time, they've generated lots of skills. We want to find ways to recognize that skills can be developed and gained in a variety of modalities and opportunities. We want to make sure that as we develop those skills and curate those skills, that the data and information about those skills can be used like currency, and that it can be empowered by, and that the individual can have access and control over that data. And it's great to see that all of you are doing similar things. So one of my key takeaways from the workshop this morning was that this is something that's a global mission, that lots of people are striving to find ways to empower individuals about their data, about their abilities and skills, so they can seek greater opportunities. So when we think about this data about skills, we at the T3 Innovation Network, we focus on learning and employment records. And when we think about this skills data, we want to make sure that that data is trustworthy. And so when you think about your projects that you're doing for learning and employment records in your various countries or organizations, these are what we feel at T3 are some of the core characteristics and best practices for LER strategies and approaches. I'm trying to go quick so that you guys can get to the party as quick as possible. But we have you've heard about a couple of these projects today. If you were at the workshop, you heard about all 3 of them. But if you're just sitting here today in the audience and you weren't able to attend the workshop, you've heard a little bit about Experience U from Simone and Colin earlier today. But Experience U, these are just 3 of the projects. At T3, at any given time, we have, I don't know, Jeannie can correct me if I'm wrong, but we have anywhere from 6 to 15 projects going on. So there's lots of plates spinning and lots of work that's being done to keep all these processes and projects flowing and finding ways to support different use cases and different adoption implementation gaps that exist. But Experience U is trying to bring past achievements forward. How can we generate skills-based credentials for the current workforce that isn't necessarily going to get new credentials? How can we bring their past educational, employment, or life-learned experiences in the form of a learning and employment record? And then through linked claims, how can we then allow those individuals to share that record with somebody else and validate the skills statements that are made in them? And then through our LER resume standard is how can we take those, the compilation of different learning and employment records and put them into a resume presentation to facilitate greater opportunities for applying for jobs or applying for educational pathways. So this is all of our work is focused on enabling this LER ecosystem workflow. And we have a number of great partners here today, and I'm hoping that we'll have a number of future partners here today as well. But this is a workflow of how all these projects can work together to really support skills-based hiring and advancement. How can we do that? And it was so great to hear from people today about their projects, about what they're doing in their countries, that they're doing different things, but they could all fit in some of these buckets, whether it's Experience U or a digital credential or your wallet. It's great to know there's people here pushing for this work, and we're excited to start engaging more intentionally with the international audiences to find ways to have that collaboration and synergies and partnership. Now, if you are an organization or an entity that is just dipping your toes into learning and employment records, or if you've been doing them for a while and you want to find ways to maybe expand your projects, we have developed what we call our LERs for Skills-Based Hiring and Advancement Toolkit. So this is a toolkit that you can find on T3 Innovation Network's hub that has a number of different tools and resources within it. We have our implementation guide, which has 6 different templates you can download to support you in your journey, whether it's a project scoping and framing, or evaluation, or technical specifications for your projects. There's lots of resources within the implementation guide to help you expand or design your LER journey. And there's also the resources hub. So if you're new to T3, if that's a new entity to you, there's probably in the resources, we have a suite of kind of communities of practice that people can join to participate in. So take a look at that. There's organizations like JFF or Open Skills Network or Credential Engine has a number of working groups. So there's different organizations out there that are doing great things, and we want to point people to those. So if you're looking at those resources as well in those communities of practice and you see that we're missing one that you maybe run, let us know so we can add it. We want to make sure this is a comprehensive suite of resources and an inclusive suite of resources. So feel free to reach out and ask us to be included or ask us to include your resources so we can make them available to everyone within the T3 Innovation Network. Another thing we heard about today briefly from Jason Tishko, our Senior Vice President at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, is the concept of skills savings accounts. So we're trying to find ways to combine all these LER skills acquisition technology tools and combine those with financial technology instruments to create a system where employers and other organizations can contribute towards what we would call a skills savings account. That would be ACAN, if you're from the United States, the healthcare savings account, but it'd be a tool that would allow employers and other organizations to contribute monthly or quarterly to their employees' account where they could use that for upskilling and reskilling opportunities. As we move into the skills-based ecosystem and a skills-based economy, it's going to be really incumbent upon all of us to find ways to empower individuals with the ability to quickly reskill and upskill as markets demand change, as the economy evolves and jobs evolve. We're going to need that ability to rapidly meet the demand for employers. And so we're trying to find different ways, and we're excited that this has resonated with a number of you that are here today, and we want to continue these conversations. So if you're going to be at EPIC in, I guess 3 weeks, this year is flying by, especially the end of the year. So if you're going to be at EPIC in a few weeks, we will be doing a kind of a little workshop, a roundtable discussion just on skill savings accounts. So if you're going to be there, we'd love to have you join that conversation so that we can really dive deep and figure out what are things you're doing in your countries that are similar to this that we can take lessons learned from. So that as we design this for the United States, we want to make sure that we're doing the best we can, and maybe we've got some lessons learned that can be valuable to you all. If you want to learn more about the Chamber Foundation and our portfolio of projects, even if it's beyond the T3 Innovation Network, we've got a number of interesting projects that might be interesting to you all, whether it's our jobs and employment data exchange, our talent pipeline management, or our employer-provided innovation challenges. We've got a number of projects that are that we think add a lot of value to the skills-first ecosystem. So feel free to check it out. Reach out if you ever have ideas of ways we can collaborate and partner. We want to continue this conversation. We view this morning's workshop as just like the awkward first date that we want to build on and build those meaningful relationships. And so we're hoping that we can do that, and really look forward to continuing the conversation the rest of this week. And just again, thank you to Melanie and Joanne for the great partnership from GDN. And again, thanks to Noni for facilitating today's conversation this morning. But with that, I'll give it back to Noni so we can get the drinks.
Well, you know, it is all about priorities here, right? I want to thank everyone for taking part today. Coming to GDN and participating in the meeting, I always think of it as like swimming in the, immediately jumping into the deep end of the pool on day one. And so my head is already swimming with thoughts and ideas and energy. And so I hope all of you are as well. And I hope that you will use this evening to continue the conversation. So tonight, we will have a reception at 6 p.m. at the Sparks Gallery. Please come. Also, I want to make sure that you know that at that event, there will be multiple opportunities to recognize and thank our new sponsors and our new signatories. One of those is at that reception, and there'll be a signing ceremony, and so it's important to show up and show support. We couldn't do this work without our sponsors and without our signatories. So once again, I would like to recognize our sponsors again. So as you head for a beverage, please say hello to your colleagues at Parchment, who is our diamond sponsor, at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, who is our gold sponsor, and then any of our silver sponsors, Aruk Micreds, or May Certif, College Source, Foreign Credential Services of America, the National Student Clearinghouse, VETASAS, and World Education Services. Tomorrow, we begin in this room at 9 a.m. sharp, so please be here at 9. But I have heard a couple of questions about the yoga. So I just want to call your attention, if you're interested in the yoga, it's in the app. So if you download the app, you can do yoga tomorrow morning at, I think it's 7 to 7:30, in the privacy of your own hotel room. We're not asking you to get into your yoga pants with your colleagues. All right? So we can all collectively do a little yoga, and I want to thank College Source for providing that resource. And so if you need help walking it, I figured it out just myself a little while ago, and so I'll walk you through it. Is there anything else, my dear colleague Joanne, that I missed?
There's a beautiful gallery showing from local artists at the Sparks Gallery tonight. So we're not going to inundate you. The talking remarks will be maybe 15, 20 minutes. The rest is relaxation, enjoyment, and food. So 6 o'clock at the Sparks Gallery.
All right. Thank you. We'll see you in a little while.